Mike, thank you so much for this invitation, and hola todo el mundo. It's my first, I guess, event in Chile, although remotely. I have prepared some slides on this issue of the tips that I would like to share with you. I hope that the sharing is working. And of course, Brian has much more experience than myself in the field. So, but I'll just try to give you some thoughts that I thought could be interesting for your career, but also for life in general, just from my own experience and maybe some observation of colleagues in the field. So let's see if the technology collaborates. So the key issues that I wanted to raise are about identity, motivations, and overall development and health. So about identity, the tip is you want to build your identity and you want to know what your identity is. So the identity is not just about, let's see, it's not just about as a researcher. There are other dimensions of your identity. We tend maybe to concentrate too much on research, but as an academic, we have multiple dimensions of our activity, of our job. But as a researcher, it's still important, obviously. And I would like to bring here a triangle that one of my professors in Minnesota taught us, Bala Chakravarti. And he said that one can think about research along these three dimensions: theory, the phenomenon, and the method. And basically, what I want to say is that you want to know who you are in the sense of what do you like the most and what do you think that you excel at or that you are distinctive from others. Are you more inclined to theory, to think abstractly about concepts, about assumptions, about hypotheses, or are you someone who really likes to think about the method and to actually work with data and methods to actually analyze that data in a better way? By the way, rigor is not only about methods, it's also about theory. And finally, there's a third dimension, which is the phenomenon. And this probably has been, let's say, magnified or more discussed recently with the grand challenges and with the discussion about impactful research. So knowing what is the phenomenon that you are studying, really embedding yourself in the reality of the facts that you are studying. And we used to talk about this in terms of being relevant, to being able to provide answers that deal with problems that the decision makers actually deal with. Another of my mentors in Minnesota, Andy Van de Ven, wrote about this in a book about engaged scholarship, precisely to address questions with matter to other people than us, researchers. So this will be the message in terms of your identity as researcher. What do you like? Which one of these dimensions you prefer, you are naturally oriented towards to, and also that you think that you excel, which means that probably you also need to think about time that you need to devote to at least bring yourself to, let's say, competitive parity level in the other dimensions that you might think you are not your cup of tea. Now, as I said, the identity that we have as academics is not limited to the role of researcher. There is also our identity as a teacher, as an instructor, as an educator. And here, you might also want to think about what are your strengths and your weaknesses in this dimension. Again, what kind of teaching methods you are attracted to, and which you might want to actually explore also. A third dimension of our identity is as a member of different kinds of communities. So we work alone sometimes. but we are members of different organizations. We are members of a school, of a management or a business school, of a university sometimes. It's not a freestanding or standalone school. And so we have to think also about our identity as members of these communities, which go beyond the school or the university, which we usually call what's the service dimension of our work. So what kind of service you want to provide to your organization, to the organization which is paying your salary, but also to the profession, to the professional communities that we belong to, such as the Academy of Management, the division here that we are representing. And finally, your more holistic identity as a human being, which is also important, I think. And these days we are, I think, more and more challenged to think about this, even though we are university members, faculty members. We also have what we do, it also has a societal, a broader dimension, which can affect the wider community. So in terms of motivations, what do you want your contribution to be? Which research topics you want to study, and what you want to be known or recognized as an expert that could actually contribute to the policy making or to managerial decision making. Also, whether you want to make a contribution to methods, and this can be generally defined also to include theory development, conceptual development, and development of theories. How important is your professional success for you, and how you define it? I think this is very important because it can create a lot of anxiety and also a lot of frustration. So how we define professional success, how it might be defined by certain professional communities, but how you want to define it for yourself. And not to forget intrinsic motivation. The first two are more extrinsic, what others might think about us, whether they might recognize us, but also to think about what you like to do, what you intrinsically like to do, where you derive pleasure, fun, and satisfaction. And obviously this changes over time. So it's not something static, and it's okay to change, that motivation change over time, and that your identity changes over time. But it's true that initial identity or initial labels that are put on your work, which tends to be initially on your research, are, I guess, have a kind of a path dependence. And finally, to think about professional development, but also more broadly at personal development. We tend to use the labels or the concept work-life balance, which I'm not very fond of because life for most of us includes work also. And this is what I was trying to refer with intrinsic motivation, that it's very important that we enjoy at least some parts of it. But indeed, there are other things in life than just work, and we might want to think about those. And feeling well, it's very important. This is a difficult and very, I guess, intense profession in which in the tenure system, we need to prove ourselves during many, many years. And so it can take a toll on physical and mental health. So it's very important to think about also how to continue feeling well physically and mentally, and also ethically doing the right thing. What matters to you in terms of your conscience in doing our work in all those different dimensions as educator, researcher, and also member of different professional communities. And again, this can change over time, and that's also okay. So these are a few reflections that I wanted to share with you.